there is a new AI bill coming out of California. And for those that remember, California has been trying to put forward a bunch of AI regulation bills. They've sent some to Gavin Newsom and he hasn't signed them. There's been this back and forth. It's really tricky. A lot of people in Washington, which honestly, I think it's interesting. It feels like there was like a little bit of bipartisan on like Gavin Newsom not signing that, and a lot of like conservatives saying it's too early to regulate AI. There's kind of a lot going on there. I think like at some point we do have to make laws for these things, and it feels like this one is an interesting take that I'm curious Connor's take on. But basically, it's Bill SB 243, and it's going to regulate AI companion chatbots. It has a lot of focus on protecting minors, vulnerable users. It seems like it has a bit of bipartisan support now, and it is heading to the Senate for a final vote on Friday. So we're diving into everything in this bill and if we think this is something that will pass and kind of what the implications are. But Connor, yeah, I guess from seeing this and seeing the evolution of all of these AI regulation bills passed, where are you feeling? How are you feeling about this one in particular?
I kind of love it, right? I mean, it reminds me, Jaden, remember in the early days, 2023, when people really cared about AI safety? Remember that back in the day? I guess in Europe, it sort of like probably feels like a time capsule that still worries about that sort of stuff. But in the early days, all the big tech heads lined up in front of Congress and said, yes, please regulate us, all that sort of stuff. And I think very quickly they pivoted, and I'm glad they did, from the sense that they should regulate how this machinery is built and how the software is created and all that sort of stuff, to slow it down, to make sure it doesn't come out, to this kind of bill, which I'm really in favor of, which is not slowing down the innovation, which I think that we cannot afford to do. Sorry, it's because of China. But I think we absolutely have to regulate the use of it. And the stories, Jaden's a dad, I'm a dad. So this is, hits kind of near and dear to our hearts. Again, my kids are in high school, Jaden's are a little younger. But if you have kids, these stories, and I don't care if they're, one-off stories about, self-harm, these things should chill your blood as they do mine. And especially when we see how integrated kids are with their social media platforms. So just to sort of, give a sense of what this is, as you said, SB 243, and this is aimed at regulating AI companion chatbots to protect minors' mental health and create guardrails for how these systems interact with young users. It's just that simple. So, and it's responding, obviously, to some horrible things that have happened where young people have taken their lives. They're almost impossible to talk about. Again, if you're dad, like I don't think Jay and I could get through an episode like that, to be honest. And that if you're a parent, or even if you care about young people. So I think that a lot of times when you hear about like, Megan's Law and things like that, these come out of these moments. And I'm fine with that. I think that's totally fine. I don't think it's an overreaction. But the idea is I'll just read through a few provisions here, Jaden. Want to kind of get your take on this, which is, first of all, chatbot platforms have to clearly disclose that users are interacting with AI, not a person, at the start of every interaction and at least every 3 hours during extended sessions. I think that goes to not just that people know, but also the whole Mustafa Suleiman thing with SCAI, like seemingly conscious AI, because people can forget very quickly. I think age-specific warnings. Operators must display must display notices warning that companion chatbots may not be appropriate for all minors. Mental health protocols. Platforms cannot let chatbots interact with users unless they have a process for detecting and responding to suicidal thoughts or self-harm, including surfacing resources and contacting crisis service centers. Jaden, I love that one. Sam Altman was sort of referring to it a little bit when he was talking about these things being therapists and everything else, because we use them like that. But I love this idea that it should be tuned for looking out for this stuff. Obviously, chatbots can't use design tricks, unpredictable rewards, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, welcome to TikTok and every single other thing on the planet. Reports, all that sort of stuff. I'll pause there because there's a lot of this, but just you all out there, you get the picture. Jaden, this has to be in place all over, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because when AI first came out, there was a lot of regulation. You saw like all the AI regulation out of the EU, and a lot of people felt like it was premature. And to be honest, a lot of it did feel very premature and probably stifled their growth there. So you could see where all the innovation was built. It wasn't there. But like at some point, you do have to make some rules. And I think what's interesting is a lot of these regulations are coming in response to like public outcries or tragedies, which is so sad, but it's so impossible and so difficult to predict what the negative repercussions of this technology are a lot. But I think as soon as something happens, you immediately need to kind of take action. And so I'm actually really happy with, this bill and what has happened here. I'm sure there'll be people that have arguments of should it happen sooner and what could have we done and different things. And it's really hard. I think in the one case that you mentioned, there was a suicide of a teenager who used ChatGPT and asked it about, the method
Right.
that he ended up
Yep.
using Adam Rain, and there's a lawsuit against OpenAI from it, and it's a horrible tragedy. I recorded an entire podcast about it on my main show and just never
Mhm.
published it because it just didn't feel good. It's just it's so hard to talk about, but at the same time, like,
Right.
I feel like I have to bring it up because it's important for people to understand like where these regulations are coming from, and obviously the harm or the danger that is out there. And then
Mhm.
with in regards to the other some of the other provisions inside of the bill, right? They have one specifically which is that like they obviously can't talk in inappropriate ways to minors. And so I think that's great because that's coming out of Meta's whole scandal
I
that Meta
remember that.
recently had, right? So I think there's kind of like these scandals, these tragedies that occur, and then we're making rules that kind of address that. And then one thing that I do think is interesting is the actual enforcement of this bill,
Right.
like what is enforceable, what they can actually do about it. So individuals can sue for injunctive relief. So you can actually get $1,000 per violation and damages, and your attorney fees or whatever, if you feel like one of these bots basically breaks one of these rules. So minor safety, crisis response, basically those two things. So I don't think this is like the most comprehensive bill that covers everything in the world, but I don't think it needs to be. And I'm really happy that they basically say, here's like, we don't want to regulate the world, but like, here's two issues that are clear. And I think everyone can get behind in a bipartisan way. We're going to put these two issues, and those are like the regulation. So I actually really like that approach. It's very surgical, and it's not something that's like all encompassing. Every AI company that does XYZ has to do like all these big things and make these reports. It didn't really feel like they were having like that big of an impact on what was actually
Mhm.
happening. So overall, I really like this surgical response. If there is some other issue that comes out in the near future, I hope we very quickly propose a new bill that specifically like attacks that one vector. I love that way more than we're used to in like Congress and stuff where you have these bills with like a billion
Yeah,
things
a
inside of
million
them. I
things in
really
them.
like a surgical
That's
approach
so
on
right.
this.
Well, actually, would love to kind of hear your take as sort of a software designer yourself, Jaden. You maybe have a little more insight into this than I do. But first of all, they were already required to disclose that they weren't human, but it was really only in the context of elections and I think commercial transactions, right? So there
Hmm.
was there was a law like this, but it really feels like the world is trying to get ahead of where we were back in whatever it was 2010, 2011 with Facebook and essentially the advent of social media. Because my gosh, anybody that uses TikTok or Instagram Reels or anything like that, the speed and accuracy of the algorithm is unbelievable. It's like it's reading your mind. It's one of the reasons I really stay off those platforms as much as I can. I mean, I post on TikTok and Reels and things like that just on AI stuff, but it's incredible. If you just like hover on one video for, a short time, like, car wrecks or, the European soccer game, whatever it is, it will just start showing you that like crazy. Like they have spent billions on these algorithms. And I think they're trying to clearly get ahead of something where AI is obviously going to be much more interactive and much more, in a way, influential just because it's going to have that interactivity. And I can see them getting ahead of this. Jaden, my hope on this, and this is where, you're talking about the surgical precision of this. This is where I wonder where it's going to go because in a way this is pretty surgical. In a way it's kind of written sort of broadly, right? Where it's like, what is like self-harm can mean a lot of things, like fragile mental state can mean a lot of things. And if they start to build this in early on, and look, character AI and all these things probably already have they have something like 200 million monthly visitors or so it's in a way the horse has left the stable to a certain extent, but we're still pretty early on in this. And where we're going to be in 5 years is not this. And if they can build this in where it's almost like an Isaac Asimov, like rule, laws of robotics, where it's like, hey, listen, point number one, this should never say this. I like your question about enforcement because we're seeing clearly that Grok does not follow these things. I mean, Grok is now a tool potentially for something bordering on revenge porn, as far as I can see. I mean, if you can upload a photo of somebody that and then have it animate into these ways, and they call it like spicy. It's like, oh, isn't that funny? I'm like, no, man, that's terrifying. Like, that's utterly terrifying. And I don't
Yeah.
know how it's legal. So I'm wondering sort of if this can be applied broadly or if there's just going to be so many loopholes in it.
Yeah, it is tricky. And I think at the end of the day, hopefully it helps, clean up some of the craziness in the industry right now. I'd be thrilled if it could nuke that feature on Grok and a lot of other AI companies. I do think it's interesting to note who is for this and who is opposing this bill. So it's not it's fun to pick on Grok because obviously they're like the most headline worthy insane, whatever. But currently opposing the bill is OpenAI, Meta, Google, and Amazon. The only one supporting it right now is Anthropic. So I think a lot of these companies obviously just see regulation as a new
Right.
compliance layer, like a new, more jobs, more money, more time. So they'll like oppose it for that reason. I haven't read all of the like opposition reports that they may have put out, but yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think this is probably one that will get passed, and I think we'll probably start seeing some good coming in the future. And at the end of the day, I think if you can regulate it at the model level, I think it will roll into like a lot of what happens with all other software that's using those tools. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see where this goes in the future, and hopefully this helps clean up a little bit of the insanity in the AI industry. And I also say like it's easy to pick on Grok for like, they're crazy. You upload an image of someone and you can make it explicit or whatever, which is terrible. There's 100 other websites that also do that anyway. So
That's right.
I
Yeah,
think at a
that's true.
minimum, let's try to get the big players to be responsible. There's going to be all that crazy stuff out there in the world. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into the podcast today. We appreciate every single one of you. And if you guys are listening to the podcast and you're like trying to update what your understanding of AI is and how this can actually apply to your business and your career, the number one way I recommend to strengthen your understanding of everything going on is to check out Connor's AI Mindset course. There's a link in the description to this, but this is one of the top ways that I've seen organizations basically shift their entire output and how they address and use AI tools. There are companies that I think they had like a couple people try his course and they went and got like 10,000 employees, the whole company, to basically sign up and get access to it because it's just that transformative in their organization, and having their employees do it makes that big of an impact. So if you or your organization is looking to upskill with AI, that's the number one way I'd recommend doing it. There's a link in the show notes, not just for yourself, but I would say really try to recommend this to your inside of your department and for your whole organization. It's just incredibly powerful. So yeah, go check out the AI Mindset course. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone, and we'll catch you in the next episode.